Welcome to All the Good Men, the podcast that is in response to the question, where are all the good men? I'm your host, Fabienne Anique, a sex, love, and spirit coach dedicated to celebrating and supporting healthy masculinity. Join me as we uncover the abundance of remarkable men in our midst. Here we dive into inspiring conversations with incredible men from diverse backgrounds. Together we'll shine a light on the beauty of healthy masculinity and the good men who embody it. Hello to all of my listeners of All the Good Men. Today I'm going to do my first solo cast, and I want to talk a little bit about my own relationship to masculinity. And in all of these interviews, I get to interview and talk to all these incredible men, and I realized I really want to come on here and share some of my thoughts around this and really truly my own personal story and experience with masculinity throughout my life. So this is my journey with the masculine, we'll say, is a journey externally with the men in my life, and also an internal journey with my own masculine energy and what I was raised around. So to give you a very sort of brief overview, early on in life, I had some challenging experiences, some traumatic experiences with men in my life, both acute, very specific experiences, and then also just as a kind of general thing. Like the neighborhood I lived in was a little sketch, and there were definitely I could feel the weird vibes from men, both towards me, but also towards my mother. I remember really noticing that from a very young age. And I also, from a very young age, had really incredible men in my life. I had really beautiful examples of healthy, loving, musical, strong, gentle men in my life. I was treated really, really well by certain men. And I also had 4 brothers, and one of them I primarily grew up with, and I was completely obsessed with him. We were best friends. We are best friends. And then I had 3 more brothers that lived with my biological father, and when I would visit them, I just loved them so much. So from a pretty early age, I both saw the potential challenges of masculinity and the issues, and I saw that from my own perspective. I saw that with my mother, and then I also felt her, and later on in my life heard her experiences with that. And so I also had this sort of baseline of, okay, there are these challenges, and men are deeply beautiful. I knew the texture of a man's love. And for that, I am eternally, eternally grateful, because I'm aware that not everyone has that template from a young age. To speak a little about my early on sort of relationship to the inner aspects of the masculine, I was raised as a hardy warrior in many ways. And when I was born into like a little bit of a challenging situation. And I kind of learned from pretty early on, like, I'm strong, I'm powerful, I can fight, I'm a warrior. I had this essence of that to me, which was absolutely beautiful and is absolutely beautiful. I love the strength and the resilience that comes from that. But it also created a little bit of a separation from the softness. Not entirely. I mean, my mom was so loving and nurturing and caring, and like I was such a little creature. Like I did have the space for that. So it's not that I didn't have that, but I did also have this sort of essence of like, I've got this, I'm a warrior, I can do this, I can fight. And I also had a much harder time with girls as a girl. So not only did I have this essence of kind of like warrior spirit, but I also would end up spending a lot of my time with boys. Due to some certain things, also some of the girls who I was closest to early on in my life, I then wasn't able to see for many, many years. So there was kind of this, in a way, this like separation from some of the feminine aspects. And I was very, very in my comfort zone around boys, climbing trees, being quick, being sort of like in the dirt. And the thing is, I really truly did, it wasn't that I was like, those were the truest things for me. Like I loved to be in a tree. But I would often race to the top of the tree when actually what I wanted to do is take my time and sit there and feel the wind in my eyelashes. And I grew up in a time and in a part of the United States where there was quite a lot of feminist movement happening quite strongly. This was in the 90s. And again, while there was so much empowerment and so much beauty in what I learned from that, I also kind of slightly rejected, and it was very subtle and I didn't realize it until only a few years ago, probably, but I started to subtly reject aspects of what was feminine, right? Where it was like, I can do anything the boys can do, but is it okay if I want to do the things that the girls can do? And that was then sort of compounded by the fact that I had a really hard time with girls. I was often left out or rejected or made fun of. That's what was either happening or my projection of what was happening as a young girl. Either way, that was my experience. So for me, the sort of roughness was easier than the vulnerability or the softness. And that really continued through life, where discipline was easy. Telling myself, cut this out of your life, easy. Rest was hard. Action, easy. Receiving, that was a challenge. And part of the beauty of this was that there was this relationship that I started to build with boys and men where I actually could sort of meet them in their masculine in a way. I could like meet them where they were at. I could kind of bro out with them. But I also had this sense that there was something kind of missing. And so my own relationship to my inner masculine has really been shifting. Well, okay, because some of these things are actually imbalanced masculine, some of them are imbalanced feminine. But asking myself, okay, if I feel into my inner man, if I feel into my inner man, like the highest, best version of him, how would he take care of me? How would he set those boundaries? How would he protect me? And what I found was he wasn't racing somebody to prove something. My inner man, my inner masculine was so loving, was so chill, would like sit back and watch me do something and be like, you done yet? Right. He wasn't telling me I needed to do the thing and I needed to be disciplined. My higher self masculine was so loving, so clear, so protective, so beautiful. And I still interact with this so consistently. When I'm feeling sporadic and I don't want to get too caught up in the words feminine and masculine, but in times where I need the love of my inner man, I call upon him and he is so clear and he is so boundaried, but he is so loving and so gentle and so creative and so present. So when a lot of this started to shift, well, actually, I'm going to share a story. It was probably, let's see, it was 2013. And I was with my boyfriend at the time, and we were at his sister's house in the kitchen. And it was Shabbat, and all of the men had gone to the temple to pray, to study, to learn from the rabbis. And we stayed at home and we were preparing dinner. And I remember I got my little on, and I was like, well, why did they get to go and pray and learn from the rabbis while we have to stay at home and cook? And I was really like, what year is this? And his sister, she looked at me. She's so loving, such an amazing human. And she was like, do you want to go to the temple? Because you totally can if you want. Women are invited. There are more men there for sure, but you can go. In fact, there's a whole section for women. But if you want to go and sit there and listen to them speak in the stuffy temple, by all means, go ahead. No one is stopping you. But if you want, you can stay here with me and you can make cheesecake and we can feel the presence of God in everything that we do. As we stir the soup that we get to feed our families, in the laugh of the children, we can feel God in all of this, in the soft ways we speak to each other. And don't forget that this expression of faith is no weaker or less important than going to the temple. And this conversation changed my life. It was really a turning point for me right around that time where I was starting to understand, oh, wait a second. What I've been working within might not actually be the freest perspective from me. Yes, I can do whatever they can do, but that's not the point. I realized how much of my life I had been fighting to be seen as just as important as the men, instead of fully honoring and focusing on the importance of myself as a woman. And of course, this fighting, it was coming as a reaction to generations of women being told that we can't do what men are doing, that we are less than, right? To a lifetime of being taught by society that the things that the boys were good at were far more valuable than the things that I was good at. Right? Fully understandable. But my reaction was actually feeding that narrative. And was also coming from the sort of feminist movement of the 70s that in certain ways was so incredibly powerful and beautiful. And in certain aspects of the movement itself were almost staying within that paradigm. So what I have found to be most healing has been to honor the ways that I do things differently from men, and to truly see myself and cherish myself for all the things that make me woman, and truly all the things that make me me, and to love those aspects of me, and to do everything that I can to let them fill my life. And what I've seen is that the more that I do this, the more that I'm actually surrounded by men who deeply appreciate me for my womanhood, not for whether or not I can do something as good as them, right? Not for how fast I am, not for what a bro I can be, but for the ways that they are mystified by how different I am from them. Men who are in awe of the expression of my heart. And of course, that doesn't mean that we always do things separately. There are things that we do together, me with the men in my life, where they're like, I'm so glad you can climb this mountain with me. Like, what a beautiful thing to be able to share together. It's not about like, well, you do your woman thing and I'll do my man thing. It's not about that. But it's not being in competition with one another. So I remember another moment that felt really pertinent in my journey with this. Jump 10 years later, 2023, and I was cooking venison over this huge fire pit after a ceremony. After staying up all night, I was totally exhausted, I was like sweating in my long dress and cooking meat in this big cast iron skillet. And there was a group of the men were sitting near me, and they were laughing amongst themselves and drinking coffee that I had just prepared with one of my friends. And a previous version of me would have been so triggered because I would have seen it through the lens that I had already sort of put into place. Right? What am I doing? Like slaving away over the fire, making you all food while you all sit there. I would have seen it simply through that lens instead of zooming out. This version of me was absolutely trembling with love and gratitude for the opportunity to pour my heart into this meat, into these tacos, And these men had just played music and tended the fire all night. They gave their full presence to the prayers that I spoke. They offered their intent towards my prayers, their prayers towards mine. They shared their prayers with me. They bared their hearts, bore their hearts. They played the drum while I sang. They teared up at the sweetness of my songs. They helped me carry all those fruits up the hill to build the altar. They painstakingly built the wooden rods with utmost care to build the sweat. So these were two different moments that I really remember being important in this journey for me. But a few other things that were so impactful. One was healing my relationship to my own sexuality, my own body, and I spent a year dedicated to that. We're talking 5 to 10 practices a week, and that it doesn't need to look like that, but that was how I chose to do it because, it could be like that. And developing my friendships with women. When I started to develop my friendships with women and approach conflict with devotion and dedication and humbleness and vulnerability, still working on it for sure. But when I started to really, truly develop close female friendships, that also opened me up to a relationship with masculinity as well. I also did a lot to become more aware of my energy leaks, to become aware of my energy, my sexual energy, my flirtation, and to be very discerning around how and why and where and with who I use that energy. And with flirtation, you can flirt with life, you can flirt with everything in life, but there are different flavors to flirtation. And so discerning within that was a huge piece of it for me. But what all of this pointed back to was my relationship inwards, creating safety inwards, created safety outwards, and my lens around men, around masculinity, around my relationship to men as a woman shifted from that. And so this whole topic in many ways has become my biggest prayer for men and women to truly, deeply see each other, love each other, appreciate each other, revere, respect, exalt each other. And this goes for everybody on this planet. This is gender non-binary people as well. But I'm speaking to specifically in my work here, the specific relationship between men and women who grew up conditioned and socialized as boys and girls. So this isn't to exclude the absolute deep reverence that I want to see between all humans, but to speak specifically to this one pattern, this one dynamic. So for us to truly see each other, yeah? To truly respect and honor and cherish each other. Not from a transactional, tit-for-tat, competitive relationship that's been going on for some thousands of years, but from a place of true union, where we say, I am whole and complete unto myself, and I could not exist without you. To say thank you for the miraculous and mysterious ways that you do things. Thank you for the things that I will never understand, for the things that come so easily to you, for the struggles that you have endured, for the incredible force that you are. To honor our differences and let that be the most beautiful thing about us. And to say, thank you, I love you, and I'm sorry. Because recognizing you in your power, seeing you, being like, I see you in your power, in your magic, in your expression of life. That doesn't take anything away from mine. And so this is really what my work is about. It's not about boxing us in, not about you do this, I'll do that. He does that, she does that. But rather acknowledging and honoring each other for the beings that we are. And in this world where there are I'm talking a lot of unhealthy examples of masculinity, right? When I ask men who I work with, who were your positive examples of masculinity growing up, the majority of them had maybe one, and oftentimes it was a movie character. So in this world where there are a lot of unhealthy examples of masculinity, we need to uplift those who are such good men, who are doing their inner and their outer work to be the best, safest, wildest men that they can be. For themselves, for their partners, for their families, for their communities, right? By finding their spice and their strength and their softness and their ferocity and their gentleness and their musicality and all the pieces to it, and being as true to themselves as they can be. Talking to you. Right? The men who are setting good examples for other men and for our children. Because Lord knows we need that. We need more good examples. And each man has his own version of what that looks like. But I am asking you, whoever is listening to this, to be a role model. To be a role model for yourself. To be a role model for other men. For the children who look up to you, whether or not you have children. But most of the men in this world are looking for good role models, probably including yourself. So be that role model. Treat women well. Honor them for the mysterious beings they are, for the beauty that they are. And as you do that, watch as they do the same unto you. I've said unto twice here. It's like getting a little biblical. But for real, when you bring that honor to your life, that doesn't mean it can't be transactional. It doesn't mean, okay, I'm going to treat you this way and then I'm checking to make sure you do that. No, it becomes a stance. It becomes a way of honoring ourselves and each other. And the more we do it, it then starts to weed out the areas where that's not happening and also inspire that in other people. Where then they go home and they're like, well, shit. So be that role model for the world. And in this exploration of masculinity, healthy masculinity, let it be joyful, let it be true, let it be deep, let it be creative. We need you. Thank you so much. Truly, truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. I want to invite you to join me for a live retreat this June from the 2nd to the 8th. We will be in Tepoztlán, Mexico for Harmonia Retreat. And this retreat will be an incredible week with women and men where healing and celebration really come hand in hand. And this is a chance for you to have a deep reset from the absolute craziness of daily life, not just by resting, but by engaging with life so fully that you leave feeling recharged with this newfound inspiration for your life. And here at Harmonia, we are going to rebuild a sense of safety, honor, and celebration between men and women. We're going to connect to nature, to the elements in a way that reminds us of our own wildness, while still being a little bit bougie. And we will participate in traditional Mexican ceremonies that are literal technology for purifying and grounding ourselves so that we can engage with our relationships, ourselves, and our lives with clarity and purpose. So I truly hope to see you there, and you can find all the information at fabiananique.com/harmonia.